Right, hello again everybody, and welcome back to the fourth part of my Hugo Winners project. Now for anybody sort of coming in cold to this, I'll just give you a heads up on what's going on here. Back in the 60s, 70s, I used to read an awful lot of science fiction, and for some reason, well, for many reasons actually, I used to read a lot of short stories. Now, I've just got back into collecting SF. I'm on a nostalgia kick collecting SF and reading. And I decided that I would get into novels. I read a few novels back in the day, but I thought I would get down to reading some serious novels and decided to go for the novels that won the Hugo Award, which is the accolade given to the best book of the year by the Science Fiction Writers of America. So that's the background to this. It's I should say that I'm just picking random books, not going in any particular sequence, and these are not reviews. I don't do reviews because I just think it's one person's opinion. What I'm doing is I'm giving you an impression, my impression of the book, and a little bit of information about the book where necessary. I know it's a very fine line between giving an impression and reviewing, but I'm not going to pick the nits out of it, and go into every facet of the book. So that's that. So we can get straight into looking at the books now. Now the first book I've read a few weeks ago, well, a couple of weeks ago, was Neuromancer by William Gibson. If the term cult classic applies to any book, it'd be this one. It wasn't that well received when it was first written, but people quickly caught on to it, and it won as you can see at the top there, it won the Hugo and Nebula Awards in 1985. This is probably one of the most contemporary Hugo winners that I've read, apart from Hyperion, which was 93, I believe. And yeah, every so often, say, I don't know, 10, 20 years, a book comes along that doesn't so much redefine science fiction as blows away the cobwebs, if you like, the old space operas and hard science stuff that was written in the 60s and 70s, which, a lot of which I don't care for, to be honest. It blew that away. And of course, this, excuse me, this particular book, he created a new subgenre, which happens every 20 years or so, the subgenre of cyberpunk. I think the previous subgenre was back in the 60s with the New Wave that created its own subgenre. So that's a bit of background to the book. As for William Gibson, replies to the book as well. He wrote a lot of drafts. I think it was 12 of the first, I don't know what it was, the first third or 2/3 of the book, because he just wasn't happy with it. Apparently he'd seen Blade Runner, the film, and the visuals on that, he felt that what he'd written was irrelevant, or would be classified as, seen as irrelevant. But he finally got around to it, got it finished, because he thought, and he didn't have a novel in him, he'd already written short stories, which appeared in this particular volume, Burning Chrome, you can see it there. And a lot of people believe that cyberspace and those sort of terms were coined in this book. In actual fact, they were They were first coined in A Story in Burning Chrome, from I think 1982. So yeah, I mean that's about all I can tell you about the book. Now, as usual, I don't want to go into any spoilers when talking about the plot, etc. But basically, there's a computer hacker called Case. He's been punished by his previous employers for cheating on them, and he's had his sort of neural abilities burned out, so he can't perform as a hacker anymore. He's recruited to do a job by a dangerous lady, Molly, who recruits him on behalf of an ex-military, who we find out his name's Cordo. And basically he's got to do this job, and he is given his abilities back, but there's a rider to it. They put these sacks into him that are slowly eroding, and they'll give him the antidote to that when he's done the job. And then we meet. I can't tell you too much about the actual plot without giving a lot away, but he meets these lot of very interesting characters on the way to getting this job done. AI characters, seedy characters. I mean the whole thing's set in originally set in like a seedy area of Japan or somewhere. So it's a couple of weeks since I read it, and some of the details are not there anymore. But and he meets these various characters, all of them, very interesting, in the efforts to get this job done. Now, I found this book quite hard to read in places. It was an interesting enough book, but I felt that I needed to learn a new language to really understand it. It came obviously written before the days of the World Wide Web, internet, and all of that stuff, the technology we take for granted now. But there's a lot of stuff in there that's a bit obscure in terms of technology. So, I was learning it as I was going along, but I was struggling in places. And that kind of coloured my thinking about the book as a whole. Not that it's a bad book. It's a good book. I just had that problem with it. I would say that I normally mark these books on a scale of 1 to 10, where 5 is average. I would have to give it 8 because it's such an interesting book. Keeps you reading. It's a real page turner, and as I say, it's one of the most recent I've read. I haven't read a lot of contemporary science fiction, but it's well worth a read. Okay, now the second book I tackled just about a week ago was The Demolished Man by Alfred Bester. This one, excuse me, this won the Hugo Award. Well, this was the first book to win a Hugo Award in 1953. It wasn't the oldest book to win an award because they gave retrospective awards later on, going back to the 40s, but this was the actual first winner of a Hugo. Now, I have to admit that I was biased before I started this book because I read The Star's My Destination, which is his famous novel, and I really enjoyed that. And I expected more of the same, which I got. And I really, really enjoyed this book, I have to say. it's not a complicated book like Neuromancer. It's basically what you could call it a police procedural novel, but it's more than that. It concerns a guy called Ben Reich, who's head of this corporation, Monarch, I think it was, and he's troubled, very troubled guy, a bit of a megalomaniac, and there again, I won't give you too many spoilers here, but just a brief outline, if you like. And he's troubled by the fact that the competition run by a bloke called de Courtney Enterprise, or whatever they were, that they're sort of stealing the march on him, and he wants a merger. Now, in his troubled state at the time, he assumes that the merger was declined, when in actual fact it was accepted, which leads to the guts of the book, if you like, the main storyline, which I won't go into anymore because I've probably told you too much already, to be honest. But basically you have Ben Reich commits a murder, unheard of in 70 odd years, because many people are telepaths. He isn't. And it's hard to commit a murder when a telepath can predict, that you're going to do it, if you like. And you have various levels of telepaths. Obviously, the first are the most powerful, can do things other than telepathy. And then you have the second and the third, which are not so great. And basically, this is a cat and mouse story. When Ben Wright commits the murder, it's a cat and mouse story between him and a guy called Lincoln Powell, who's the police chief. And obviously, with him being an Esper, they call them peepers, it's difficult. Ben Reich has to use some very dodgy methods to get round this. That's all I'll say. That's all I'll say about the plot, but it's very, very fine book. I find that Alfred Bester has an energy. That's the best way I can describe it. He has an energy to his prose, which, people like Arthur Clarke, Isaac Asimov, who've written some wonderful books, and their legacy, will probably go on beyond Alfred Bester because he didn't write that much. But I find, their prose fairly plodding and staid compared with this guy. It's just, if you want to read a page turner, this is the one you want. And I just love Alfred Bester's prose approach. And as I say, I really enjoyed the book. There's not really much else I can say. He hasn't written that many novels. I'll have to seek out, although I've only got this and The Star's My Destination, I'll have to seek out some of his other stuff. But it's I think of all the writers that I've come across, he's probably, he certainly would be in my top three. And this book, on that scale of 1 to 10, with 5 being average, I'll give it straight 10. Really, really impressed. And that is all I will say about it. So yeah, that's the last two that I read. I'm in the middle of a book at the minute, which is quite interesting. Obviously this is a long job, so I'm not a fast reader, so I only get through a couple of books every couple of weeks. So there'll be a bit of a gap in between episodes, but at the moment I'm trying to pick a few books that are not so heavy on page count, if you like. I think I mentioned to you last time that I picked up a book more recent Hugo winner called Green Mars, which runs to 700 pages, and I won't be reading that anytime soon, I can promise you. So, yeah, as usual, thank you very much for watching. Please comment if you have any, if you've read these books and you have any views, even if they conflict with mine. I'd be very pleased to hear from you. Please try and share the video if you can, because it helps me get a few more viewers, because I'm trying to build up a new viewer base now I've moved on to science fiction. And yeah, just comment and what have you. And I will see you next time. I think next time I've got a shmups video lined up for all of you shoot 'em up fans. So yeah, I'll just leave it there, and hopefully I'll be with you in a week or so to do that video. But in the meantime, as usual, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you very soon. Bye bye now.